Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 71st episode of the Manor Podcast. I'm your co-host, Roger Bodee, joined as always with my best friend and other co-host, Michael Hamilton. Michael, one second. Quick intermission. Just need a coffee break. For those who are audio-only listeners, I am sipping a cup of coffee because it is early in the morning, and I am working off of 1 hour of sleep at the moment.
Oh God, that is not enough sleep.
Thank you for that extra 10 minutes. It really gave me time to make sure the coffee was brewed just right. Now I'm ready to record a podcast.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear it. Because that's what we're here to do.
How was your night? What did you do?
I slept. I got to bed bright and early, like 10 something. Well, I actually laid down at like 9 something, and then I couldn't sleep. And then Casey was ready for bed, and then I fell asleep much better. That was my night.
Nice. Well, depending on how nicely you value sleep, and we all know at this point I value sleep pretty lowly. So, I fought the good fight last night.
I like sleep. I got my 8.5 hours of sleep, had my alarm set for 7:15, get up to bright and early, record. I woke up at like 6:50 before my alarm went off. It was good. Good times.
But how did you have time to message Joshua Scott about all the bright lights rules interactions until midnight last night? You didn't do that?
I kind of just left that one to you. I figured you had that one covered.
Yeah, I've been messaging Josh a bunch. So thank you, Josh, for all the rules questions that I've been asking you about all these complicated interactions. I went from understanding the set like 0 to like understanding it like maybe 4. So like that's pretty good. It's a complicated set.
I'm sure once his rules write-up thing comes out, it'll shed a lot of light on how some of the cards play too. For
sure. So I guess with that being said, we're going to talk about all these cards now, right?
Yeah, the whole set's spoiled, I think.
Yeah, you have your top 10 list ready?
No, you said we weren't doing that. I had it ready. All right, I was going to get it. I didn't have it ready. Remember how I said I woke up at like 6:50 this morning? I had plenty of time to do it, but you said we weren't doing that. So then I sat around and watched YouTube for 30 minutes and had a banana. And
I'm sorry, I deprived you of spending a whole 30 minutes of carefully evaluating the top 10 cards. I didn't realize that you were going to put that much time and effort into this.
It's fine. I'm not bothered. Nothing's wrong. But I was ready.
The set's too complicated, man. Like, I don't even know how to evaluate so much of this set on just like a fundamental level.
Well, let's just jump into it.
So let's start with the area that I'm still the most confused on and have no clue like how this game plan is going to operate or work or what, like the whole Evo system. What do you think about that? What do you think about that evolving your equipment?
Yeah, so the Evo stuff is pretty interesting in the fact that a lot of it's like pretty far above rate if you're doing it from your banish zone with Teklevessen. So if you look at the blue ones, I think are the best ones. The
Evo Steel
3. Yeah, the Evo Steel.
Yeah, Evo Steel Soul.
I think they're the best both because they're the strongest. They're also bases, so you can you can change back out of them once you go into them. And they're also blues, which blue cards, if like a card is the same power level, but it's blue versus being a yellow or a red, the blue's just going to be way better every time because blues that you're happy to cast tend to be the strongest cards. Or like it just pitches for more resources. So yeah. So they also block 3 and they are very powerful because if you spend 4 resources and an action point for what is essentially 5 points of value between the temper 3 and the temper 2 on the blocks, that's kind of spending 4 resources for 5 value, which is above rate. And then these equipment have upsides beyond that where first, you're turning on all your stuff that cares about having different number of Evos equipped. You're turning those on by equipping these. And you're also getting extra abilities when you transform other Evo sets into these or these into other Evo sets. You get like the chess piece gives you extra intellect. I swear I know what the other three do, but I'm
No,
blanking
the
right now.
headpiece gives you extra intellect, Michael. The chess piece gives you 3 resources first time it's
Oh,
equipped.
that sounds right.
The arms give you power conditionally. When you transform into it, you may put an attack action card with 6 power from your graveyard into your deck, 5th from the top. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the legs, when it transforms into this or an Evo with a different, so it gets the transformation on its initial transformation, and then when you, since it's base legs, if you transform into something with a different name, both those transformations, you'll get an action point.
Mm-hmm. So these don't work when you're transforming from the non Evo bases. They don't trigger their effect, so they'll actually trigger less often than like we might think, and then they don't trigger when they're transforming into themselves again either because
No,
it
they,
has to be a
they
different
do.
name.
Well, they
The
transform off
bases
the
aren't
base because it
Evo.
says when it transforms from or but isn't that it
The base
transforming
form.
into an Evo with a different name?
It says from
It's
or to a
transform.
different name.
It's
Maybe
transforming
maybe we
into
should wait for
something different.
the rules thing.
I
But I
didn't ask
believe
Josh
they
about
don't.
this question.
Yeah, I
That would make
believe these do
sense.
not trigger when you transform from the base equipment. They won't trigger their extra effect, which means these aren't the first time you're transforming into these. It's not like a huge. You're not going to get the huge power spike. I think the intellect one is the biggest, but missing out on any of them, it would be nice to have. So I do think that Teklovestin is going to end up being fairly strong. I think having these really powerful cards you get to play from your banish zone is
How are you getting
just
him in the
good. And
banish
then
zone?
like so there's a few different ways to do it. And the old ways are boosting, and then you could potentially play Tekla Foundry Heart. Possibly you could boost and then use Foundry Heart to banish 2 cards from the top. If you
That
do
still
Foundry
involves
Heart, you can
boosting.
never get the 4. Yep, yep. I haven't talked about the other way yet. So
Okay.
these kind of go together. I don't know if the heart is good enough in the boost package or not. It's maybe, it may not be. Giving up a 4th Evo slot is kind of expensive. The other option is you can use the new scrap cards. There's like the big dog that turns into Raging Onslaught if you scrap something from your discard. And there's a 0 for 3 that gives you a resource when you scrap something. And so if that's your play pattern, then you're going to block with these cards, and then you're going to scrap them, and then then they'll be in your banish zone, so you can equip them there. And the blue ones also block 3, which means they're easy to block and scrap without giving up much value because they're blocking for 3.
Okay. So let's talk about scrap then, since we're having a scrappy conversation. This doesn't get you an action point, right? So, like, for example, something like Scrap Trader, the new Majestic that costs 0 but has scrap. It's a very scrappy card, and you get 2 resources for each card that's scrapped.
Yep.
So you play it, you can get 4 resources, but you don't have an action point anymore, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Though Teklovestin does have the ability, you can pay 3 resources to be able to cast your next Evo as an instant, and if you do, you draw a card. So with those 4 resources, you need 1 extra blue. You pitch a blue or you activate Teklovestin, and then you pitch another blue to equip a 4 cost. The
Gotcha.
4 cost blues.
Okay.
And then you'll
That
draw a
makes
card
sense.
too to replace the blue that you pitched for resources, which means you're going to arsenal a random card, like ending your turn with a snatch or something. And assuming this deck needs a lot of blues and it has a lot of these Evo pieces, there's going to be a lot of cards that you aren't like stoked to arsenal, which is kind of awkward, but we'll see how it plays.
Yeah, and just in my initial brewing with some of the mech decks, I realized how scary it can be to like lock one of these pieces away in your arsenal, since you don't even have Crown of Providence to help you filter out that like transitional to a different arsenal. Like anytime you arsenal a card as a mech, you have to play that card in order to get it out. There's no filtering in arsenal or anything like that. So if you're looking to play your maximum velocity and you're really dead set on doing it, until you boost 3 times in a turn and have the 2 extra resources to do it, it's sitting in your arsenal.
Yep. Noteworthy, I don't think Teklovestin is going to end up being a maximum velocity deck, even if he ends up doing the the boost plan,
Sure,
it
sure.
seems hard to fit that plus your Evo stuff in your deck. Unless maybe it's just
Yeah.
like light on the Evo stuff. We'll see.
I was
I
just
haven't really.
alluding to a classic mechanologist arsenal trap, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Not like a Riptide trap, but like a personal player trap, you know?
Trapping yourself.
Yeah,
But
so people are calling this that for Tekla Vesson that they didn't know they were reprinting Oldheim in this set and things like that. Do you think this is just like a hard control fatigue deck?
um it is possible because you can just like block out scrap trader your Evos, play your Evos, block out some more scrap trader your Evos, play your Evos. Um that is definitely something he's capable of, and having all these extra armor on the Evos and having like ways to use his cards defensively. When you give him extra cards, he'll just equip some better armor and reset his block on his armor and get maybe some bonuses too. I do think he is capable of being quite defensive and possibly fatiguing, but I also am not confident that's the most efficient way to play him, because if you're going for the Evo stuff anyway, a lot of these attacks get really, really strong, really efficient when you have Evos. Like first his weapon, it's a 1 for 3 with Go Again once you have 4 Evos equipped. That's like insane. That's just Dawnblade that has Go Again every time you use it. It's the same value as Rosetta Thor because it's not costing your action point, and then you just get that every turn once you have 4 Evos. So going hard fatigue, in my mind, doesn't make the most sense once you're going down the route of equipping all 4 Evos and doing all this. It makes more sense to just like take your way above rate value stuff that you've gotten from jumping through all these hoops.
Yeah, like so Annihilator, Engine, Terminator, Tank, War Machine, all these cards turn into 3 for 9s with Overpower, right? And then different on hits. So Annihilator Engine on hit, destroy all cards defending it. Terminator Tank on hit, they discard a card, and War Machine on hits, destroy all cards in their arsenal. So you get a 9 powered overpowered Command and Conquer. Pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty good. So I also think without like I do think he'll be able to fatigue some decks, but I don't think he quite has the tools to play as fatiguey as maybe Oldheim did. I think that he's going to run out of cards in deck 2. That's something that he has to worry about, especially if he's not swinging a weapon very often. Like he has no prevention that isn't actually costing cards.
Yeah. So, do you think he's going to be like, if we think of a deck like old Boost Dash and even new builds of some of these mechanologist decks, they're going to be 100% mechanologist cards or 99% mechanologist cards, because you always want to be hitting mechanologist cards off your boost in order to ensure you're getting your action point.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think Teklo Vesson's going to fit that mold, or do you think he's still going to want things like Sink Below's, potentially like Warmonger's Diplomacy, like some of these more defensive or just like generic cards? How do you view like generic cards slotting into this deck so far?
Yeah, I think it really depends. If you go like on the pretty heavy boost plan, you're probably just going to want to stick with all the mechanologist cards. But like if you're just going like the scrap build, I think there is a lot of room to explore playing with like a decent chunk of generics in the deck.
Yeah, and interestingly, Scrap and Galvanize don't care about mechanologist items being destroyed or banished for their effects. So you could even start playing with things like Energy Potion or Time Snap Potion, or like any of these other, just like any of the whole cavalcade of Everfest items that are just waiting to be broken in order to satisfy their effects as well. So I guess the issue, though, is going to be when you start putting all these items in your deck one way or another, you're going to start putting a bunch of no blocks in your deck. And it's hard to be it's hard to be a go long value deck, even if you're not fatiguing with a bunch of no blocks in your deck, right?
Yeah, that does make it quite difficult. um, yeah, I don't think Tekla will end up playing that many items. I think that he really needs like I think he really ends up needing a lot of his cards to be this Evo equipment stuff because it's really important that you transform your crappy do nothing base equipment into Evo equipment fairly early in the game. If you're sitting there with base equipment for most of the game, then like that's just really bad because the base equipment ability they do have abilities. They are pretty bad.
Yeah. I don't know. He's the hero that I am. Like I said, I was very unconfident in the set's power level or how the expectations for it. He's like example 1A of why I just have no idea how to evaluate. Like the whole Evo system seems so interesting and complicated. And then it turns out he's not only Tekla Vesson, but he's also a Transformer Decepticon that's a shadow robot. Cyborg? Yeah, cyborgs are humans that become robots. Androids are robots that look human, right?
Uh, yeah, I think cyborgs are humans that are like enough of them has become machine that they are somewhere between human and machine, but they started as human.
Yeah.
And androids are the opposite, where they are robots that are designed to be human like.
Yeah, I always remember androids because of Dragon Ball Z, baby. You got Android 18, and then you got a bunch of the other ones that aren't Krillin's wife and a cute blonde girl, and then they're there. They're there.
Yep, I know just what you're talking about. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Oh, well. If you didn't know, I'm also married to a cute blonde girl, so life comes full circle sometimes.
Okay.
So this demi hero, we've now have two demi heroes, and they're both shadow heroes. What do you think about this new demi hero?
Yeah, this demi hero is very different from Levia's demi hero form.
Yeah, got to cast this one.
Yep. And you need to draw this one copy of this card in your deck. And once you draw it, if you have 4 Evos equipped, then you can use it. A couple things to note about it is you only get 3 intellect when you flip into this demi hero, which is very, very different from.
Yeah, it turns out robots not very smart. Who knew?
Yeah. So this is actually a card where even if you met the condition of having the 4 Evos equipped, if your opponent's at 40 life and the game's going to go on another like 8 turns, it might not be worth it to transform for a few turns. So I think that whereas I guess with Levia, it was almost always correct to transform the first opportunity you had that wasn't costing you anything because your demi heroes were just your demi hero form were usually better. This one, well, it is very strong. You give all your mechanologist attacks go again, and then attack actions go again. Attack action cards go again. And you also get this really strong attack where your opponent discards a card when you use it. You can only use this attack until you run out of stuff to banish from your mech suit thing. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to run out of things to banish from your mech suit thing before the game ends, it might not be worth it to transform.
Yeah. Importantly, while it's equipped, it doesn't count as having 4 Evos equipped. So I was going to say his weapon has all its abilities satisfied, but you need all of his weapons to transform into it, right? You don't have a weapon anymore, so never mind.
Yeah, the weapon goes into the mech suit.
Yeah, this card's not really what I was expecting. That's for sure. If you would have told me Shadow Mechanologist Demi Hero Equipment Evo was a combination of cards types that I would have to be evaluating at the end of the spoiler season, I would have thought you were making things up. You're just putting a word salad of Flesh and Blood cards together. And here I am looking at it in... I guess the metal and steel, not Flesh and Blood. This guy's not even Flesh and Blood anymore. Like, it's just crazy, man. This thing is bananas.
I do expect that if you're playing the 4 Evo slots, you're probably going to want Singularity in your deck. I think that there will be enough games where this card single-handedly wins you the game that it's worth the risk. It's worth having it's worth like kind of disabling some of your weapon, taking away this other stuff to transform most of the time. And I suspect that there will be a lot of Teclovescent games that are won by transforming, and then you just have this 6 power attack that makes them discard a card on top of giving all your stuff go again. I think, yeah, I think it's pretty strong. But
So I guess it's the issue with Singularity too is that it's a red and it's a 3 block. So are there any? I haven't looked. I guess there's some of the base things that help you get actions back, or they only attack actions. Basically, what I'm getting at is like, if this is in your graveyard, is there any way to get it out of your graveyard? If you accidentally boost it away, I think you're just kind of SOL. But as far as like if you block with it and then intentionally get it back later, are there ways to do that in the set? Do you know?
In the set, I'm not sure. The card that always comes to mind when thinking about returning actions from your graveyard is Remembrance, which definitely works with this, but then you have to play Remembrance in your deck. If you boost it, I believe it is gone forever. I haven't seen a way to put it back. There might be some weird niche item that can bring actions back, but I am not sure.
Yeah, I'm just looking at these protocols. There's backup protocol red, yellow, and blue. They're another iteration of the red, yellow, blue design. And they only get attack action cards from your graveyard, so these can't get that back. Yeah, I guess Remembrance might be the only way, but then you're putting even more no blocks in this deck, and it's a yellow.
Well,
so
you say even more, but there aren't necessarily any no blocks in the deck yet, right? None of the evos are no, or I guess not. None of the best evos are no blocks.
You don't like the other majestic ones?
The
instant
other
wins?
Majestics that cost 0 and don't block, I think are interesting, but they are kind of awkward in Teclovescent because it's really hard to get them in your banish.
And they want you to have a hyperdriver, so they're probably not really what Teclovescent. I don't imagine Teclovescent's playing a lot of hyperdrivers in his deck.
No, I do not think you want hyperdrivers in your Teclovescent deck.
So I guess that's fair. But like, you don't think he's going to want any other items?
I don't know. I am not confident he's not going to want any items. I haven't played with the set. I haven't played a game with Teclovescent yet. I've just looked and read. But I'm saying that it's not inherently true that he's going to have a bunch of no blocks in his deck. You could reasonably build it. I think it would be reasonable to have a first draft Teclovescent deck that had 0 no blocks in it. And I don't think that would be like, what are you doing? Why aren't you including these broken cards? Because none of them are like...
What about Fabricate?
Obvious.
You want Fabricate in there, right?
None of them are obvious must includes in my book.
But you get to re-equip some Evos things. Evos get +1 defense. This card's basically just like a free Art of War, dude.
Yep.
That's what it is. It's just a free Art of War.
So one issue with Fabricate is you have to spend extra sideboard slots on these base pieces because you equip them from your it's an armory. It's called an armory. You equip them from your armory. So let's say you start with a base piece on every slot, and then you upgrade them into things, and then your equipment gets blown up because you either block with it when it's at temper 1 or something. So then you're going to fabricate them back. Well, now you need the fabricates. Then you also need more copies of these in your sideboard to be able to equip them. Because when they break, they aren't going back to your armory. They're just going to your discard pile.
That's fair. I was trying to think of how it worked with like the re-equipping the daggers from effects before and outsiders, and you had to have those cards in your sideboard even though they were like tokens. So I guess that makes sense.
You had to have extra daggers. So
fair.
I do think that Fabricate does do some really cool things, and I'm definitely going to play some games with it, but it wouldn't surprise me if it doesn't make the cut in a Teclovescent deck.
Yeah, that's fair. Interesting stuff. Yeah. Lot going on here. Lots of different pieces of equipment. You got the Evo Sentry base heads. Even these are common, but like I think these are pretty good too. They're reds, but they maintain that base subtype. So they're just keeping Battle Worn 2 Evo space subtypes. So I mean, like that's just another 3 block you get out of these on your equipment over the course of turns, and playing it at instant speed seems kind of reasonable.
Yeah, and if you can get these in Banish, then it's 2 resources and an action point for 3 points of value, which is basically outrate, 2 resource and an action point that doesn't cost a card. And then on top of that, having these equipped when you transform into the blue ones or transforming the blue ones into these will trigger the special blue effects that care about Evos with different names, because these are now Evos. They're base Evos instead of just being bases. So I think we could see a play pattern where you're like equipping these and switching back and like flopping back and forth between the blue ones and these red ones that could be pretty powerful to retrigger the blue effects.
There are no yellow ones that I'm seeing that maintain that base subtype.
Oh, yeah. There are the majestic 3-block yellows that are Blade Break and not base that also I think could be potentially pretty good. There's a lot to figure out here.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want to move on to more familiar ground in Dash, or do you have anything left to say about Teclovescent?
I'm ready to move on to Dash. I actually think she is not going to end up being very familiar ground, despite being the same hero that we know and love from forever ago.
Well, I guess like let's talk about old Dash first. Do you think there's any reason to play old Arcane Rising, start with the item and play Dash over Dash Database?
Yeah, I think there is. So Dash's hero power is worth a decent amount of value. Old Dash, where you're getting like probably roughly 6 points of value. You're getting to play a 2-cost item without spending the card, the 2 resources, or the action point, which is about 6 worth of value. And you're getting it on turn 1 or turn 0, which is when this like induction chambers or plasma purifier is able to get the most value, or even Teclo Pounder. You're guaranteed to get all 3 triggers in starting the game with it. So I do think that there is a solid argument. She also starts with 40 life. I think the deck builds are going to end up being reasonably different. There will be some overlap, but with the new Dash is doing a lot of very different things.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, the distinction is going to be if you're doing more of like the controlling pistol Dash, you want to put generics in your deck and be less focused around being strictly all this mechanologist stuff, then you play old Dash just because of the reliability of ensuring that you're starting the game with like something that buffs your pistol every game. But if you want to go this heavy, like maybe that's not even true, because I guess I'm lost on Dash IO as well, because it's just like, this is just a weird hero ability. Like there's so much value here in looking at the top of your deck and being able to play items off the top of it. But like, what do you think like is the point of it? I guess like what do you envision this deck looking like?
So there's a lot of different things you could do. So first off, I think the most easy include in the new Dash is the Teclo Core, the item that we've seen in old Dash before, where it's like you just play it and then you get 2 resources for your next 2 turns. Very, very powerful card. And just getting like anytime you draw this off the top and just spend a resource that you were just going to use to like fire your pistol or something to play this, that's going to feel like a great deal. You're going to get a pretty big advantage by doing that. Mostly, it basically turns 1 resource into 4 when you do that. So, and being able to cast that as an instant, it doesn't even cost your action point. That said, that's not enough to warrant starting without an item in play and starting down 4 life compared to old Dash. So you need to find other items that you want to be playing off the top, whether that's like crank items that are giving you back your action point, so you can do like 2 things that would cost an action point in a turn because there's a crank thing on top. Maybe you can play more generics because you know when your boost is going to hit a generic. We saw even in old Dash, we saw Toma Fiendal, a pretty frequent or pretty recurring card we saw in old Dash. I think towards the end of the format, we weren't seeing very many Toma Fiendals, but new Dash is like can play that very easily. She also has crank items to get her action points back on top of high octane in the boots. So I would not be surprised to see 2 or 3 copies of Toma Fiendal in the new Dash decks. And I think that you have to find some more items that meet your condition, because even with the power of putting generics on top and having or being able to see when you're about to draw a generic and having Teclo cores for free sometimes, you really do need to get a decent amount of value to make up for this lack of life. I saw a post on Twitter from Sasha Markovich where he posted the picture of the 2-cost thing that enters with 5 steam counters, and you can transfer steam counters from it to other items. And it sounds like there might be potential for like a pretty combo-y version of Dash that he's looking to explore. So I don't know if I am capable of figuring out a sweet combo build of Dash, but I think there's a lot of stuff going on with this hero, and I think it'll be cool to see where it goes.
He's also the one that pioneered or advocated for the amplifying arrow deck, right? With Korsham, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
that guy loves to combo.
He's a big combo guy.
Kano, if there's a combo, that guy's gonna figure it out. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a way to get free ice cream in Lil, he's gonna figure out how to get that free ice cream.
I don't know the story.
I got super drunk in Lil, and then I bought him free ice cream. Well, it wasn't free for me. It was free for him after I bought it for him. But I was just so drunk that basically he's like, let's play a game. And I was like, okay. He's like, the loser has to buy the other one ice cream. I was like, okay. And then he pulled out some app on his phone. And he's like, you lose. And I was like, okay, here's free ice cream. I love that story.
I see.
That was a good story.
You should have won.
I'm lucky.
You could have had free ice cream.
Oh yeah. Oh well. What are you gonna do? Maybe I should have played my phone game. That I don't know.
Yeah, I think.
Back on topic.
I think.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think Dash is actually probably going to be the hardest of the 3 heroes to figure out, because like getting that right balance of no blocks and making sure you have enough triggers to get or enough items to get your value, and also figuring out what the correct amount of generics is. You're probably still doing boost stuff, because the boost stuff is generally the strongest thing mechanologists can do. Like 0 to 60 is just above rate, zipper hits above rate, throttles above rate. I guess we noticed that the other boost cards are toned down quite a bit, but I think these are pretty powerful, and you also want to like churn through the top of your deck. You want to get rid of the top card so you can see the next card. So if the top card's like a random boost attack, you want to boost so you can see if the next card's an item, and then you can play that item. So yeah, I think it'll take a reasonable amount of time to figure out Dash. There might not be something there. A lot of the items aren't the most impressive. I think the best of the new items, it's the one that enters with a steam counter and gives all your attack action cards +1 power while it exists, and it lasts 2 turns by default. So if you hit that off Dash, you spend I think it costs 1 base, so you spend 2 to play it as an instant. Then you send let's say you send 2 or 3 attacks this turn, and then 2 or 3 attacks next turn. You're spending 2 resources for 5 or 6 damage, which I guess 4 to 6 damage, which is pretty powerful. And yeah, so I think Dash might be good. Definitely going to be a hard one to figure out, though.
Yeah, and earlier with Teklovesen, same thing applies here. The more items you put in your deck, the more no blocks you have in your deck, the worse you're going to be at being able to defend, obviously, and starting at 36 life, that's not ideal. And contrary to Teklovesen, or I guess the crank mechanic where I said any item will satisfy that, critically, Dash's ability only works with mechanologist items, so no flipping energy potions off the top with Dash IO or database, which is probably good.
And the items have to cost 0 or 1, so we can't see it as like a turbo to your induction chamber plasma purifier like controlled Dash. So I think if you're looking to play those, you probably want to play the other Dash.
Yeah, I did a little bit of brewing with one deck, and I was like, okay, there has to be some way in this set to put in the old 2-cost super powerful, majestic items like induction chamber or Tekla pounder or plasma fury, any of these. Nope. Everything that puts things in an item into play is 0 or 1, every single card.
Except good old Spark of Genius. That card's still good.
That's a Dash specialization, and that card's good. That card's sick. But everything in the new Bright Light set, if you're cheating an item into play, it has to cost 0 or 1.
Yep.
Sad.
Some very deliberate design decisions here.
And you would think maybe then there would be some items in the set that cost 2 or more that maybe have a little bit more power, since you can't cheat them into play. But I believe all the items in the set also either cost 0 or 1 as well.
Well, there's the 2 cost Majestic that I was talking about earlier. That enters with 5 steam counters, and you can put a steam counter from it onto other items when you play other
That
items.
card's from Dan's Dynasty.
Oh, it's not a new card.
Nope, it's an old card.
Oh, just kidding. Okay. I haven't seen that card before.
Well, yeah, I guess that's another card they don't want you cheating in as well. So, so you said the dash is going to be the hardest of the 3 heroes. Do you think this is going to be harder to build than Teclovescin?
I think so, mostly because dash is like, yeah, you have to put items in your deck, but like the card you put around the items is so up in the air. And then like outside of the few items that you're playing, like figuring out what the other items should be, because there aren't that many good items. I think it'll be pretty challenging to actually figure out exactly which ones you want.
Yeah, that's fair. What's the other one? I think the blue. You alluded to the blue that gives all your, I think it's a yellow that gives all your mechanologist attack action cards +1. Importantly, doesn't apply to the weapon token effects like plasma purifier or anything like that. It's only the cards. But there's a blue one that also gives them +1 defense, and I think that card might be pretty good.
Yeah, the fact that it's blue is also very nice.
Yeah. What do you think about her new weapon, this symbiosis shot? It's a specialization, so she's the only one who's allowed to play it. And has the classic just free attack with the steam counter, just removes steam counter attack. But it's whenever a mechanologist item enters the arena under your control, if symbiosis shot has fewer than 6 steam counters, you may put a steam counter on it. That's the only way to put steam counters on it.
Yeah, I'm not sure about this. It really depends how vulnerable this dash is to fatigue, because if you have the choice, you'd rather your weapon costs 0 than 1, and I think a lot of the time this is just going to be a plasma pistol that costs 0 instead of 1, or just 0 cost fire for 2. If you're playing a lot of items in your deck, and I think you probably will be, otherwise why are you playing new dash?
Fair.
At first I thought this item was just, or this weapon was just going to be for limited, but like thinking about it, I think it would be hard to be playing new dash in constructed and not putting enough items into play to make this kind of tick. I think the biggest downside is it doesn't work with induction chamber or plasma purifier, because they specifically only pump pistols, and this is a gun, not a pistol. But I wouldn't be surprised if this actually does end up being the weapon that dash uses.
Okay. That's interesting. My initial impression was that it's a limited only card as well, but I guess it could have legs in class constructed, or I guess we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Are you ready?
Move on to Max.
We're 40 minutes in, about, give or take 38, 40 minutes.
Yep.
I love Max, dude. Max might be my new favorite hero. As long as
really?
there's an asterisk here. As long as he is like an actual nitro mechanoid deck, as long as like he can consistently transform into the nitro mechanoid, he's gonna be my jam, dude. Bolton's gonna go away for a little while until they give him a cool transformation when he turns into Boltimus Prime, leader of the Dawnbots. Max looks sweet, dude. I like this hero a lot. Yeah. I like his design. I like his card pool. What he's got going on. He's my jam.
Well, I got good news for you. I do think he is going to be the hyper mechanoid hero. I think he is. I think he did get what he needed to get there, basically.
Yeah. So like I said, I'm very unconfident with what's going on in Teclovescin and Dash, but my brain, I just remember seeing Nitroid Mechanoid from Dynasty, and it needs hyperdrivers. I read this guy's hero ability, and it says makes hyperdrivers. Put 2 and 2 together, and I'm like, I'm in. Let's start brewing. Let's start with 1 Max, the hype Nitro. This guy's hype, and 3 Nitro Mechanoids, and see what we can make happen. So yeah, go ahead.
I do remember you also posted this top secret technology in the team Discord, never before seen, of combining high octane with the mechanoids. So you can attack multiple times.
Yeah, dude, who knew? Because it's not a once per turn action. You can do it multiple times as long as you have the action points. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I discovered that all on my own.
Because everyone, maybe not everyone, but every time I saw the mechanoid in play, people were trying to high octane to attack 4 times with it.
What are you going to do? This guy seems sweet. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think that his ability is just going to give so much consistency on the, what are the tokens called? I already forgot.
The hyperdrivers?
The hyperdrivers. So much consistency on getting your hyperdriver count up that I think he will be very good at making the mechanoid. I think you'll probably still play the red hyperdrivers in your deck because getting that first one that you can boost the extra time means you don't need to hit one of the things to recharge a steam counter on your hyperdriver to get the 3 hyperdrivers into play for your mechanoid. You can play the red one the first turn. The second turn, you can activate his ability to get the second one. The third turn, you can activate his ability to get the third one. And then you'll have 3 hyperdrivers in play. You can crank the last one and play the mechanoid.
So I have 9 hyperdrivers in my first build. And the reason is I want to see how good this legendary equipment is that's new. It's called Hyper X3. It has Battle Worn Block 1 as a headpiece. Whenever you banish a hyperdriver from boosting, you put it under this headpiece. And once per turn, when a hyperdriver is put under it, so once you have 3 or more, you're drawing a card. So not only is boost giving you an action point every time you do it, the first time every turn, it's drawing you an extra card as well. And that seems very powerful once you get this thing going.
Yeah, definitely. If anytime you just draw an extra card, that's quite a bit of value.
Yeah. I will say I'm sad that you can't play Blessing of Ingenuity with this card though, because the cards that go under are still considered in play. They're not in the graveyard and they're not banished. They are just placed under the card on the battlefield. You don't control them. Importantly for those kinds of effects. This was what I was spending a lot of time talking to Josh about. And so you can't pull them into play and just get all 3 into play with the Blessing of Ingenuity. So that's off the table once you're doing this. But what is interesting though, all the hyperdrivers that are under this, so when you transform into the Nitro Mechanoid, those cards will just be moved under the Mechanoid for additional attacks. So let's say there's 4 hyperdrivers under this, and then you transform into the Mechanoid, the headpiece and all 4 hyperdrivers that are underneath it go onto the mech to give you 4 more attacks, essentially, which is really good.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
So that's what I'm looking at. That's what I'm exploring right now. Plus, if you're not playing Blessing of Ingenuity, then I imagine I'm going to be casting a non-zero of these hyperdrivers to just get them into play to hopefully set up for a Nitrate Mechanoid. But even if I don't do that, we didn't talk about this card in Boost Dash really, but Tarek Patel's spoiler, this new card, Twin Drive. This card's sick, dude. It's got boost twice. Boost, baby.
Yeah. So on its own, the second boost, all it is really doing is kind of ensuring the first boost against a miss. But because if you boost twice and you hit both times, your thing gets go again twice, but instances of go again don't stack. But where this card really starts shining is when you look at combining it with some of like traditionally Boost Dash's power cards, both High Octane and Maximum Velocity, where High Octane, you get an extra action point each time you boost. This will give you 2 extra action points. Pretty strong. And Maximum Velocity, this is 2/3 of the boosting you need to do to trigger the condition or to meet the condition of having to boost 3 times. Normally, you have to go like, normally the best way to get 2 triggers is playing 2 0-cost boost cards, which is 2 cards for 2 triggers. This is a card and then 2/3 of the resources of another card to get 2/3 of the triggers. So an easy, common play pattern that I expect to come up with this is you pitch a blue, you play this card with boost, you're boosting twice. You play a 0-cost boost, and then you can activate Tekla Foundry Heart, turn your 1 resource into 2 to play the Maximum Velocity. And that's a pretty strong 4-card hand. I don't think without a Tekla core, I don't think Dash has ever been able to play maximum velocity off a 4-card hand.
Yeah. And what's interesting is once you have hyperdrivers on the battlefield, that 0 cost turns into 0, 1, or sorry, it goes from 0 to 1, 2, or 3 costs as well that enable you to do it, or allow you to not even activate the Tekla Foundry Heart at all in order to maximum velocity. So maximum velocity was a card that I was always super skeptical in old builds of Dash because of how unreliable it was. When you did it, obviously it was very, very powerful, but I saw a lot of games with Dashes dying with maximum velocity in their arsenal, as I was alluding to earlier. And I don't think that's going to happen anymore thanks to Twin Drive. This card looks really good. Another interaction is that it plays really well with Pulse Wave Harpoon off of a blue. So this and then Pulse Wave Harpoon, that's 3 resources. And then that's 3 times you boosted this chain. Very good. And I believe it's Magnetic Shockwave.
That sounds right.
Yeah, the blue that pulls equipment in. It's not. It's also clean. Oh no, it's not clean off of blue because Magnetic Shockwave cares about the number of times you boosted this combat chain. So if you break the chain to activate Tekla Foundry Heart, then obviously it no longer applies. But if you have the extra resources or some hyperdrivers at giving you some resources, it's not going to be unreasonable to just be able to play this one other boost card and get all their equipment blocking, which is
definitely
pretty good.
It's powerful
Ability.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the aggressive boost dashes shift over to Max with kind of like this fallback mechanoid plan for games that go a little longer. You turn into this big mechanoid, you bash their face in with a big mechanoid, and then you're probably like you lose your induction chamber to start with Dash or Tekla Pounder, whichever direction you went. But in exchange, you get kind of this flexibility to spend your resources still with making hyperdrivers. And yeah, I think Max will be strong.
What do you think about his weapon, Banksy? First of all, what is that a reference to?
I have no idea.
It's a famous graffiti artist who did lots of very famous pieces of graffiti art. His name was Banksy.
And his weapon is a 1 for 3. If it hits, you get to put a steam counter on something with Crank. Is that right?
Yeah. Activate it only if you have Crank this turn.
Only if you've cranked this turn?
Yeah. So you would pitch a blue. His hero ability costs 2 resources. You get the hyperdriver into play. You crank it. And then you have the floating resource to then come in with Banksy is like how you would activate it.
Yeah, it is rough that you have to crank to do it. You don't really want to be spending 2 resources for 1 tick of a hyperdriver that's kind of converting 2 resources into 1 resource in the future. So you
can put that resource back if it hits.
That's true. If it does hit, then you get the resource back, which does help some. But I think that this one I wouldn't be surprised if we see just the pistol instead, because of the flexibility of being able to spend your 1 resource and spend the action point whenever you want to. I think might push it over Banksy. The requirement of having to crank to attack makes me a little skeptical.
Yeah. The weapon that I actually have in my first build here is Hanabi Blaster. So it's the once per turn action, remove 2 steam counters for a 5 power overpowered attack. And the third time you play a card with boost each turn, you may put a steam counter on it. Unfortunately, it's not the third time you boost, because otherwise, Twin Drive would be insane. But Twin Drive only counts as 1 card boosted towards Hanabi Blaster.
Yeah, I do like Hanabi Blaster. I think that could be the weapon of choice as well.
Yeah, like I very much agree with what you said. What the game plan is going to be, you're going to be this aggressive leaning boost deck that tries to pull off disruptive pulse wave harpoons or maximum velocities, or just come in with these efficient boost attacks. And I think Hanabi Blaster plays really well into that game plan. And then once you're all done boosting, you can't play Hanabi Blaster or use it anymore anyways. Might as well turn it into a big old Gundam and ride it on to victory.
So yeah, I think Max well, being the simplest of the three heroes, in my opinion, like the easiest to solve, I think there's still a lot to figure out there too, which is pretty exciting. And it is also cool that we got three mechs that are like wanting to take their deck design in pretty different directions. So I am excited to see how this shapes out.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd be interested in like a very aggressive leaning boost dash or like a dash boost mechanologist deck because I always thought boost dash was pretty boring. And I think you were kind of like a similar mindset. Like the hands were just like, if you do your efficient attacks and you play your efficient attack and you go attack, 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 attack. It's like it's not a very like divergent gameplay, but I think these new boost cards that they've printed, and just kind of like the new design space make it so that there's more going on even when you're on this boost game plan.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I got 3 copies of 0 to 60 in here. No copies of 0 to 50 in here, though.
I do love the flavor of 0 to 50.
So
I do not expect to see any play ever.
That's that card.
It's worse than T-Bone, worse than 0 to 60. You really need some. You really have to be desperate for 0 cost boost before this one makes the cut.
Like the flavor text is so good. 0 to 60, you'll get a ticket or something like that for going that fast. Let's see here. What about this weird equipment that's legendary for mechanologists? This adaptive plating. So it could be any equipment zone.
You're gonna have to read it to me.
Adaptive plating is just a mechanologist equipment. No, it can go in any equipment zone. Action 0, equip it to another equipment zone. Galvanize, when this defends, you may destroy an item you control. If you do, it gets +2 until end of turn. And Blade Break, base 1 power. Or base 1 defense, sorry. So if it's 3 block Blade Break if we sacrifice an item you control on the battlefield.
Yeah, I could see this being better than your boots or your arms, but I don't know. None of the items have been like none of the items are like, I want to be sacrificed or broken by the Galvanize. I actually think Galvanize, it wouldn't surprise me if that keyword is a pretty big miss in Constructed. I think like, how often are you having your items that you want to just blow up?
So let me hit you with this.
Okay.
You said earlier the big issue with Fabricate is that you have to register all the different slots of the equipment zones since you don't know what's going to be blown up or something like that. What the interesting ability is that this can move. So let's say you just want to have like arms be the equipment that you fall back on for extra fabricates, and you blow up your arms over the course of the game. You either block with them too many times off of a temper, or they get blown up by some other means, whatever. You can move
the adaptive
plating. Or no, because then they would have started in your arms. I don't know. It's just so weird, man.
So if you want your arms to be the equipment that you're fabricating, you start this in your arm slot. Then when your legs get blown up, you can move this to your legs and then put your new arms on.
Yeah.
But like at that point, why aren't you just starting with the base arms?
Yeah. I don't know. So I don't understand this. Like there's something there. I just can't see it.
It's not a base piece, right?
No, it's not. There's no.
If you could Evo onto it, then it would make a lot more sense.
For sure.
But I don't actually see what the use case is for this, unless like the galvanize, is that what it's called, where you stack your items. Unless Galvanize is a lot better than I'm giving it credit for. I'm not sure what the use of this is.
I think Galvanize is fine. I think Galvanize in particular on like blues seems really interesting to me, where if you have especially in Max, where if you just have like a hyperdriver with 1 counter left over, you don't need the resource, you can just block with it and then sacrifice your token hyperdriver in order to block for 4. That seems pretty good.
Yeah. If there's blue galvanized cards that you're happy to include in your deck anyway, that makes sense. But I think it's like, it feels kind of like Blue Brother in Arms to me, where like there's going to be situations where you're happy that it has this ability to block for 4, but the rest of the time it's like a 2 block. And Blue Brother in Arms has seen more than 0 play. I think it's seen some play in Icelander, and I think a little bit in Oldhim as well. So I guess blue galvanized cards might get there, but I am not confident.
Yeah, in particular, there's a card called Steel Street Hoons. It's a blue, cost 3. It has base 3 power and 2 defense, boost. So it does have boost on it. If an item you control has been destroyed this turn, it gets +2. So if you use that last counter off of a hyperdriver and it gets destroyed, it turns into a 5 power blue. And as Galvanize, when this defends, you may destroy an item you control. If you do, it gets +2. So it could be a 5 power 4 block blue with Go again.
Yeah, costing 3 for 5 still is not a rate I'm very happy with.
3 for 5 Go
It
again.
is a blue.
For a blue,
yeah.
I think that's really good.
Really good strong, but it's okay. It's serviceable.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the flexibility on that card on a blue is just like insane. Like that card really jumps off like the spoiler page to me.
Yeah, that's fair. It probably will see play. It probably will be played in most, maybe all like max decks.
I know we didn't do a top 10 list, but this card would have made my top 10 list. Just saying.
Fair.
And then there's still a couple cards we don't know, right? So if we move on, like last but not least, obviously, is this crazy expansion slot that we've seen spoilers for over the past couple of weeks. Lots of interesting things have come out over it. I think we talked about the Warband of Bologna and some of these other ones. I think the last one that came out, which thank God they printed some Prism Hate. This Shadow Slay card.
We really needed the Shadow Slay.
Destroy target angel ally. Whew. That hero was almost not F tier. So thank God they printed this to keep Prism down as the worst hero in the game.
Well, Vincent's also doing pretty bad. Maybe Vincent needed some help.
Yeah, Vincent with her unpreventable arcane damage needed help blowing up the Ward Angels. Yep.
I don't know. It's fine. It's not going to see any play, but it's yeah, sure.
I love the set. I just needed to this card in particular is just like
not the one. I didn't do it for you.
It's red. It's an instant that doesn't block.
It costs 0, right?
The art's sick. The art's really cool. I like the art. And it exists. So then we got another Draconic Illusionist Ash, though. We got one for Chromai. Dust of the Chrome Caverns.
Yeah. I think it might be the best dust. That said, the dusts haven't seen a lot of play. I guess I shouldn't say they haven't seen any play, but they haven't seen a ton of play. But Chromai is the best dragon. You don't want Chromai
outside of Tomotai.
Yeah, it's the best dragon. And a lot of the time against the Guardians, the matchups where you wanted these dusts, doesn't matter what dragon they're killing, it's taking their whole turn. So dusting up Chromai in a turn means that your your Mirror guy will survive, your other Chromais will survive. I don't know. I think that dust plans will probably be dusting the Chromais in the future rather than going for these other dragon dusts.
Yeah, they're easier to play. Like, I think Vincerikai was the one they would go for most often, but that was always a little clunky because Vincerikai cost 3. It was obviously very powerful and had a very powerful on hit and was very threatening, but it was just, like I said, kind of like just a little clunky to set up. Whereas going for playing this as a 0 and then Chromai being a 0, just like it's a pretty smooth game plan overall.
Yep.
Very easy to just end on turns with action points with your go again dragons after they don't get popped and just slide this right onto the battlefield. I expect this card to see a lot of play. So Dromai gets 2 very powerful cards out of the set, and I think Dromai is going to be a major player in the format coming up. Yeah,
it's honestly hard to imagine her not being. I think especially Kyloria lines up really well against what the mechs are trying to do on top of Dromai, on top of just Dromai being very strong. Kyloria lining up well against the mechs, and ice going away is a big deal for a deck that wants to be have as many red cards as she can. I guess I
Tomultai
shouldn't
as
say ice
well
going away. But
hoses any like Teklovesen. Like if he's not playing the card that gets more things, he can't transform because you need the 4 mechanologist equipment to transform. Same with the Nitro Mechanoid. If Tomultai blows up one of my mechanologist pieces of equipment, I just can't transform into the mech. So I have to take that card out in that matchup. I can't rely on that to try to help me, play through a fatigue plan from Dromai. I think Tomultai. I think there are a lot of cards in Dromai now, in particular, that line up extremely well into Mechanologist.
I'd agree with that. And I think Dromai was one of the best decks in the last format, even with Lexi. Like, Dromai was very good. So, yeah, Dromai is top of my list for what you should be keeping an eye on.
Yeah, and fortunately, it's even to a point where I'm even keeping an eye on Dromai at this point. Sad days.
Your favorite hero.
I wonder what these last couple cards are. At this point in time, it's like early in the morning. We don't know. I think there's like 2 or 3 cards left in the expansion slot that we just don't know. They could be anything.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find out soon enough.
Any other cards in the whole set you want to talk about? Anything you want to get off your bright lights mind?
I would like to dive into this limited format at some point. Not a today thing, but I do think the limited format looks pretty cool.
We'll be diving into this limited format soon, I'm sure. Yeah, I have some thoughts about the limited format as well. But I guess we'll save that for a limited focused episode.
Sounds good.
Okay, cool. We did it. We talked about bright lights. There's this card down here, Findel Spring Tunic. Do you think this card's going to see any play? Do you think this card's going to be good?
Yes, it is. It will see play.
Oh, okay, well that's good. I'm glad it's here then. Oh, with that being said, the next time you're brewing with one of the new mechanologists or playing with Findel Spring Tunic, always remember, mind your manners. Thanks for watching.